the Tuesday, July 21st, 2020 Zoom Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. It's 4:30 p.m. and this meeting is being recorded. Moving right on to the action list. The first item is approval of police detail rates. And I'd like to turn this item over to Vice Chair Campbell to discuss. I need to recuse myself from this item.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. So let's start out with a motion and then we'll get into it and go from there and talk about what's going on. So is there a motion?
I have the motion, yes. I move the Board of Selectmen approve the new private duty detail rates as recommended by the police chief to be $48 per hour as a town rate, $56 per hour as a private rate, and $74 per hour as the classified private rate for overnight alcohol strikes and not applicable to the town. These rates shall be in effect until further vote of this board.
I'll second it.
Great. You've heard the motion. There's a second. And Mitch, go ahead. Take it away. Let's talk about this.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Every few years when we have a new contract, we do need to make some adjustments to the detail rates. So these are in large part based on the hourly rates for the police officers. So as everyone is aware, the board ratified a new contract previously in town meeting, approved funding for year one. So this is the every couple of years setting of the rates. So these rates will apply for this year and until moving forward. I expect that at some point we'll probably need to make another adjustment as some things change, but this brings us up from the last few years and sets a new benchmark. So I would recommend that the board adopt these. The third rate is something new in the past. Excuse me, there was just the town rate and private rate. This third rate is something that multiple other police departments have been doing in the area, mostly relating to utility work, where there's overnights required, and those are in other communities typically a higher rate if you're required to work overnight or if the officer's required to be on that detail overnight. So the recommendation is to approve as your motion indicates.
Okay, and these rates are set and they are, I mean, obviously any town work that requires a detail, the town absorbs the cost, but any other rates are paid for by the utility companies and or whatever parties that are hiring these folks, correct? Correct.
We have a reduced rate, which has always been the case. And then the other two are for private entities.
Fantastic. Yes, Selectman Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question, Mitch. Are these rates consistent with other municipalities across the North Shore in towns similar to us?
Generally speaking, where there is a comparator, yes.
Okay.
The town rate is basically their overtime or close to their overtime rate at this point. Mm-hmm. They're generally comparable. The third special rate actually is probably even a little bit lower, but these rates were, as the board knows, the board sets the rates. I did, however, give the union an opportunity to provide a recommendation on the rates, and that's what we have in front of us. That's what you have in front of you.
Perfect.
Your recommendation.
I just wanted to make sure that, we are consistent either way with other municipalities comparable to us. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, great. Select Person Wilkinson, did you have any comment?
Aye. That all sounds great. Thanks very much, Mitch.
Okay. And Selectman Brackett, how about you? Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Nope, I'm all set.
Very good. Okay. So you've heard the motion. It's been seconded. Roll call vote. Selectman Brackett?
Aye.
Select Person Murphy?
Aye.
Selectman Wilkinson?
Aye.
Selectman Campbell votes aye. Vote carries 4-0 with one abstention. And we may now call back in Chairperson George.
Okay, just give her 1 second to come back on. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Yep.
Okay. Our next agenda item is on the action list is approval of the August 1/12 budget. Do I have a motion? Sarah, that's your motion. Do you want someone else to do it since you're driving?
Yeah, can somebody else do it for me? Thank you.
Sure, I'm happy to do it. I move that the selectmen approve August 1/12 FY21 operating budget as recommended by the town administrator and the finance director and direct its transmission to the Department of Revenue.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Great. Mitch, I'll turn it over to you to discuss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The finance director is here as well. Exact same thing that you had to do for July. We need to do the same for August. Should the board approve, the clerk will need to certify, and then we send that off to DOR for their approval. And this remains in place until there is a town meeting.
Great. Carrie, anything you wanted to add or?
No, just keep in mind that what will then basically be resident in the general ledger is an aggregate of July's figures plus the newly approved August figures.
Okay. Any questions of any of the board members?
No, a 112 budget is fairly straightforward, so.
Okay,
We anticipate doing this each month until town meeting, of course.
Hope potentially this would be the last one, but that
Let's hope
depends
so.
on your next discussion item.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Okay.
hoping.
Seeing no further discussion, let's do a roll call vote. We've had a motion and a second. Selectman Murphy,
Aye.
Selectman Brackett,
Aye.
Selectman Wilkinson,
Aye.
Selectman Campbell,
Aye.
Select Person George, aye, 5-0. It passes. Thank you very much, everyone. Those are what we have on the action list. Our next is discussing town meeting. I thought we could break it into the two parts. First, the meeting date, number 1. And Mitch, do you want to talk about thoughts on that or?
Certainly, Madam Chair, I'm going to also unmute the moderator and the clerk who are here.
Oh, I also want to say we have Bob Visnick here, Pat Brown, Darren Klein. I believe we have
Afternoon.
folks from IT,
Yes.
and there might be someone from the clicker company who does the clickers at town meeting also on the call.
Yes. So, thank you, Madam Chair. The dates that I had previously discussed with the moderator and the clerk are at this point, August 8th or 15th. I would ask the moderator if he could provide any further information on this, if you'd like to.
Sure. And first at the outset, I would note today that we are meeting by Zoom. And I would ask you to take a moment, and this is a rhetorical question, and think, why are we doing that? Okay, I think I know why you think that. I'm very good at reading minds, but we're going to come back to that concept in a little bit. But we are talking about a meeting that might have more logistical issues than many of our previous meetings. Obviously, I've cleared my extensive calendar for either date, so I'm okay with either one of those. But it may be that to resolve all these issues and make our meeting go smoothly, we might want to contemplate the latter date. And we also, as part of our discussion, the discussion I've been having with Mitch, trim down the warrant, but also perhaps include some things that might ordinarily go in the September town meeting, because I don't really see from a scientific point of view things changing dramatically. So the reason we're all meeting, of course, by Zoom right now in July will likely be the same reason it might not be prudent to meet in September unless absolutely necessary. So Mitch and I have talked about, we normally do CPC business in the fall. Maybe there's some of that we can do along with a truncated warrant in the summer, because by the time we get to a meeting, we're only going to be 3 weeks away from the date of the September town meeting. So I just state that, you know, at the outset of this. As you may know, and those of you who have spoken with me between our formal get-togethers here, I've had some concerns about holding this meeting. I'll note under state law that if the moderator of a representative town meeting determines it's not safe to assemble the town meeting members, those moderators have options to have virtual meetings. We don't have those same options, but some of the communities surrounding us have come up with some pretty clever and creative ways to hold a meeting. And I would like to propose one of those ways this afternoon. And that way, to have a meeting, I believe that would be safe, would be to have a hybrid meeting. Mentioned that before. We keep it short. Maybe we start it very early in the day. We have in-person meeting for those who want to meet in person in a socially responsible way, for example, on our soccer field. But we would also allow those who don't want to gather on the soccer field to meet in vehicles, like a drive-in, in the parking lots that are part of the town property. And I've not spoken recently with town council about this, but Mitch has. And I believe, if I'm not speaking out of school, Darren, that if we do this right, that would also comport with state law. Many communities have been doing this high tech. I would propose that we have a low tech backup, but perhaps do a high tech meeting. The company that produces our clickers also has the option of running the same software through a phone app. The same app that you use to, order your food and talk with, your colleagues can provide that same type of service. And Greg and I spoke about this. We last spoke about it today. So with the drive-in service, what we would do is encourage people to sign up ahead of time, because it works via email addresses. But for those who wanted to pull in at the last minute and attend in that manner, we would set up, for example, 50 email addresses, Rockport Town Meeting number 1 at whatever, Verizon or AOL or whatever, and then have those ready and provide those with people with a way to get in and set up their new email address and be able to provide that same voting ability that way. We could broadcast via a Zoom app to those people, but we'll also have, we'll try to have a low frequency or low volume radio, just like when you go to the drive-in. And in case none of this works, we'd have a yellow piece of paper. You can vote that way, and you can participate by calling in your questions. Or if you feel the need to get out of the car, we would have microphones and, of course, sworn-in deputy moderators in the parking areas as well. To keep the warrant as sparse as possible, I have contacted all of the citizens petitioners and asked if they might be willing not to make a motion on their particular article, knowing that somebody else might make a motion. And I've gotten so far 2 people who are willing to not make a motion, and 1 person who does want to make a motion. And so I still have a few people to hear from. And so, that's what I have. Mitch and I know that we will have to meet and determine the logistics. We'll need to meet with public safety. Pat Brown's going to be an integral part of this, and she has. And we have IT. We'll have to do a lot of things to make this happen, but I'm just not comfortable having people gather when none of us here today are gathering, and where the numbers all over the United States are are just growing. And even though our little part of the world seems to be okay, you know, if you go to a beach, as I did this past weekend, and you see all the people together, or you drive around downtown and you see everybody, you know, our air is contaminated by everybody else in the world who's coming here and who's interacting with all of us. So I don't think that there's anybody who can scientifically tell me to be comfortable with having a meeting at this time without giving people an alternate way to attend. Thank you.
Bob, I have one question. Have you spoken to both the Essex moderator and the Manchester moderator, our two closest adjacent small towns, and spoken to them of how well or how bad their outdoor low-tech town meeting went?
I have spoken with the Ipswich moderator, and I've had interactions with various people so third-hand conversations about some of these.
But nothing, you didn't reach out to Essex or Manchester since
I
they
did not.
successfully.
Yeah, I'm just, right now, we're at like 24/7 at this firm trying to deal with everybody who wants to get their estate planning done for some reason.
Well, I think that's an important part of having two adjacent small towns like us did it. At the paper, I haven't seen anything negative, how easy it worked. So, and my thought would be to have that same type of situation, but add in the piece that if people wanted to stay in their car, they could also raise that little placard outside their window and hold it up to vote.
Well, yeah, we're talking about doing, yes, we're talking about the same thing.
But I'm not saying it would be through Zoom and everything. I think it would be just over a loudspeaker that everyone could hear everything. Darren, were you going to speak? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say a couple things, Madam Chair. And by the way, for those I didn't get a chance to say hello to, good afternoon. It's great to see everybody healthy, and I hope your families are healthy and safe as well. You know, surprisingly, I don't know about surprisingly, but interestingly enough, the town meetings have been going very smoothly this year. Many have had them outdoors. Some have had them in much bigger gymnasiums with much smaller quorums. You don't have a quorum for your annual town meeting, so that's not an issue. And several have done very similar, a process very similar to what Bob described. What you can't do is you can't vote remotely. And you can't be sort of obviously off the premises. If you're going to have it at the high school, you can use the parking lot as an alternative site, as long as you take a lot of the precautions and measures that Bob mentioned, that they're voting in a way that's at least similar to what you normally allow, and you have sort of the backup available should like the clickers not work, that you can have people raise their placard outside their car, and also have the ability to address town meeting from where they are. Those are sort of the important steps. What you can't do is say, you know, we're going to have it at the football field or the soccer field, but if you want to just stay at home and Zoom in, we'll count your vote that way. That you cannot do because you're not a representative town meeting. Don't ask me why they allowed that for representative town meetings. They're not open, but that's what they ultimately decided. So there are ways to do it. You know, one thing I had said that I think a couple things that have been really helpful for town meetings going smoothly, similar to what you're discussing. The warrants are definitely being pared down. Really, I think, you know, most town meetings are only going forward with the articles that they feel they have to go forward on, and sort of keeping the warrant limited. And the other thing that I've seen really effective used in a couple other towns is you have a very well sort of advertised almost pre-town meeting, where the purpose of that meeting is to literally try to get a lot of the discussion out of the way. You're not going to prohibit people who want to speak at town meeting from speaking, but really the purpose of that pre-town meeting, if you did that, would be a chance for people to debate the issues. So hopefully by doing that, a lot of the debate and discussion can have happened through Zoom at a previous night or however you want to do it. And what you would hope from that is people won't feel the need to have the very same discussion several days later at town meeting if it was vetted well enough at a previous board meeting. Not every town has done that, but those that have found that very useful and have found that really helped shorten the actual town meeting. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Darren. Paul?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Darren, have you been into a town meeting situation that our moderators just described, where people would be voting from cars and things of that nature? Just wondering if you've seen any town meetings that are, not the norm, obviously.
I personally have not attended any of this nature. Our firm has attended a number of them, and they have gone very well. I know Windsor and another town that I'm escaping me, it did something very similar to how the moderator described. We've also had, I want to say, one town meeting that was literally held at a drive-in movie theater, and they did it in the parking lot, so everybody was there by car.
Oh, wow.
And I know that went very, very well too. So, people are getting creative. Let's just hope this is a one-year thing, and we're at Bob's house celebrating after town meeting at the end of next year.
If I'll come back to let other people jump in. I'll come back in a
Pat,
minute.
you want to speak to it?
I know Greg Alexander is on the phone. I was wondering if we use the clickers outside, is that a doable thing? Is it something, or do those not go over that much of a distance or won't work outside?
So I'm gonna, I assume Greg is Greg. I'm gonna unmute him. I'm also gonna unmute Mike Montgomery and Monty Hitschler both of them from IT to talk about that as well. Okay, Greg, you are unmuted, as are you, Mike and Monty.
Yes. In response to Pat's question, will they work outside? They will work outside. Bob and I talked about that this afternoon. Without testing, because obviously there are additional obstacles potentially outside. You've got greater distances, and so it definitely would need to be tested. I participated in the annual town meeting in Hamilton last month. I've attended 3 town meetings actually in about a week and a half time frame in the month of June. Hamilton was outside in a tent. Everything was successful there. The voting did work, but they had more people show up than anticipated. They actually had more people than they've had since sometime in the 1950s. So we did not have enough clickers to accommodate everyone that attended. We could not use electronic voting, as it turned out. So we did one sample, just test question, the way we had done in Rockport years ago when I first visited, and that was successful, but then we couldn't use the technology. Dudley and Sheffield both conducted their meetings inside. Neither had more than 100 or so people probably in attendance. Sheffield actually had an overflow room in their gymnasium. So they met in their auditorium, maintaining social distance. They used their firefighters as ushers to escort people to and from their seats so that they could assure that no one was up and moving around when they shouldn't be. And then they had the overflow room in the gymnasium for anyone that could not fit. But again, in answer to Pat's question, direct response, it should work, but it needs to be tested basically to assure that it will work.
In the same respect, would they be able to use clickers in the cars, or would we perhaps resort to orange papers out the windows?
I'm a little more concerned about the inside the automobiles because of all the metal and the interference that the steel is going to cause, and it's going to extend the distance even greater when you have vehicles in a parking lot. Bob had talked about using the what we call mobile, It can a smartphone, tablet, or computer could be used as in place of a clicker. Again, there are some logistical things that we would have to work through to make that work. One of those being connectivity. Is there a cellular signal available in the high school parking lot so that if people could get connected with their mobile device or with a hotspot or what have you if it was necessary. So that would be the biggest issue there.
So how could we confirm that someone from maybe their home on a cell phone isn't coming in and voting, whereas that they're just in the parking lot or just in the field? How can we confirm that they're not further away?
That's a great question. If we do the idea, and I was thinking, Bob, what you and I were talking about this afternoon was just creating those dummy accounts ultimately. But if someone, initially, Pat, you and I and Bob had talked about the potential for people to register for town meeting and you'd obtain their email address. And unless they actually did check in at town meeting, they could potentially vote, if they registered with your office ahead of time and then they decided, well, I'm not going to show up, I'll just stay home and do it from here. We cannot restrict their geographic location when they are doing that. The only way we'd be able to do that is if we had the dummy accounts set up using those email addresses that, just generic email addresses that Bob had mentioned. And that way there would be people, only in the clerk's office potentially would those email addresses and passwords be known, and those could be provided to people as they registered, and that would be what they would use to vote. That's the only way I can think of. Right.
There might be a double check-in process, so you could pre-register, but you wouldn't be able to vote unless you had a check-in at town meeting physically being there as well.
Darren, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's no case law or precedent out there for any of this. I will say, of the suggestions, the one that made me the most nervous was the voting through an app, because right away, I would think, in addition, and I'm not a law enforcement person or a security expert, certainly not a cybersecurity expert. You would also have to make sure you prevented people from leaving, even after they checked in. You'd have to make sure they couldn't leave either, without, I guess, deregistering from the app.
They would be in a car.
No, but the car could leave.
Right.
Yes, but I think you can decertify that email address.
It would be really difficult. It can be done. It would be difficult to do it in the moment during the meeting, honestly.
So I'm just kind of synopsizing this. This is Pat again. I think I liked Bob's idea that gets more people voting, but I think that if we had counters or people monitoring the parking lot as well as the field, and I don't know if you're going to do this in a tent or not, but I mean, if you could use the clickers in the field and then perhaps orange cards in the parking lot, then I would like the old way of having some manually counted and some counted electronically. It would speed up the process a little bit and would have hopefully more people in the field than in their cars. I don't know how many people will be able to be in the high school parking lot. Yep. I don't know. Does anybody offhand know how many people that holds?
I think there are 2 or 3 parking lots altogether that are part of the school complex.
And you would need, if you have 2 or 3 parking lots going on, you're going to need a lot of people to monitor those cars so that we could count votes manually.
That's correct.
I think
Mike, do you have any idea how many?
I want to say roughly there's 146 in the auditorium parking lot, but that's the only one I'm familiar with.
I think Sarah has a comment. Let me put Sarah on first, and then I'll get to you, Dawn.
Hi, I'm audio only today. I'm driving. So my concern is that things are getting really complicated. I think that, like, in a perfect dream, I love Bob's ideas and it's creative and outside the box, but I worry that the more complicated this is, the more people and volunteers, which is further putting people in harm. So I would love to see what, maybe it was Hamilton, I've actually heard from other people, like what the closest town, like the simplest thing the closest town did, and honestly, like not reinvent the wheel, but copy it, because I'm just concerned with like multiple parking lots and the app, and that in trying to get the most number of people that we're getting ahead of ourselves. But I'm all for like the simplest, quickest town meeting. I also think in terms of the dates, I know for the school, like the earlier in August, the better, because they're really up against like a September 1st, like they run into major budget issues then. So I don't know if that can play into this. But maybe the, I missed your name. I think it might be Greg from the Clicker company, but kind of the simplest that you've seen work the best, I would love to hear.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Dawn, did you have a comment?
Yeah, so a couple things. Number one is to Sarah's point of it's getting complicated. That's the purpose of this meeting, is to clear up that complication and to try to figure out the best route to get the most people there in the easiest possible way, and obviously the safest possible way. So with that said, as far as the clicker, the app is concerned, I'm a big fan of electronics. I think they work well. I think if done right. So and again, I think Sarah said your name might be Greg. I apologize for not remembering. Can the app be configured in such a way that it will only take a login from a town network that's set up by our IT department, or is that too large of an ask?
So that's actually going to be something that may pose an issue with the network outside. Mike or Monty, can you just touch on that?
We wouldn't be able to do it anyway.
Oh, you would? Okay.
Okay.
No.
Well,
All
just,
right,
can you just,
that answers that question.
Okay, and I think Darren said that wouldn't be an option. You didn't feel.
Well, I mean, one of the issues is a concern about voter fraud. And I think that regardless of whether people raise their hands or people, stand up or people say aye, there are ways to have those votes be done fraudulently. You can take your clicker, you can have somebody else, vote with it while you walk around. So I think that all we can do is the best that we can do, and realize that perhaps, if we give people a username or authorize them for the system, that they're, stating under penalty of perjury that they're only going to do this in an authorized way. So I'm fine with low tech as well. The only thing that I'm uncomfortable with is not to provide an alternative to an in-person meeting.
I just have a follow-up,
Yes,
if I
Dawn.
can.
Yes,
Yeah,
John.
thank you. And this could be to Darren and or Bob. I want a clear understanding of what the have-tos are and the cannots are. In other words, what do we have to do in order to be compliant with state law, and what can we not do to make sure we don't step outside of the laws? And I know it's kind of a precarious situation.
So I'm going to give you a clear answer, but it's still going to be some room for ambiguity. For an open town meeting, you're not allowed to participate in that meeting remotely. So people have to be in.
Does remotely count if you're in the lot on an app? Does that count as remotely, or is it just off-site?
Well, again, we have had town meetings where they've been in the parking lot participating, but I think I don't know that we've done one where they've actually voted through an app as opposed to a clicker type situation similar to what you have.
Ipswich tried it and they had a technical glitch, so they turned to the low tech. And that's why I want to make sure that we always have a low tech option here.
So there's not a lot of rules around this because we're dealing with emergency legislation. It's not like, there's been 25 years of test cases. There's actually 0 cases where it's been challenged, 0 interpretations. We know that open town meetings you're not allowed to participate remotely. So, maybe, and I'm not a technology expert. So it just, when I start hearing apps and stuff, start thinking, is that going to look a little too much like remote participation? But I mean, it's really just another way of voting sort of through a clicker, to me that sounds okay. I probably just don't know enough about the technology.
Okay.
Paul, did you
Thanks,
have any
Darren.
questions? Concerns?
Well, I think that, the clickers obviously would be for folks that, are in the audience, so to speak, on the soccer field, if we go that route. And then we would have people, sitting in their cars, and that I think the easiest way would be to use a yellow piece of paper or something to vote. So you have the combination of both, and I think you can accomplish everything. How many people do we think are going to attend this meeting? I mean, the Hamilton situation, they had more people than they anticipated, but 150, 200 people? I haven't been to a town meeting where we've had over 300 people, I don't think. So I think with the what's that?
Nothing, no.
Oh, no, so I think the combination of the parking lot as well as the soccer field, we would be able to accomplish this. And again, we have a lot of people here in town that aren't technologically savvy, elderly people. So we want to make sure that they can participate in a low-tech situation.
Pat, did you want to say something? Then I'll get to you, Rob.
We did have over 400 people at one of our town meetings recently, and we had 400 clickers. Now we have 500 clickers. So, I mean, we're prepared for 500 people in a field.
And more importantly, we have 500 licenses. So if we use the app, which essentially is a clicker, but it's on your own phone, that's permitted within our license arrangement. So there's no extra cost to that. And Greg's company would support that in the same way they support the clickers.
Ross, did you have some comments?
Oh, well, I like the app idea. I mean, with the clickers, you're creating another object that's getting passed out to all the town residents and stuff like that. So I was thinking, just for safety reasons, if everyone has their own phone, which most people do these days.
The clickers would go to one person, and they all have plastic sleeves over them, and they've all been sanitized.
I understand that, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's still opening up another surface.
Yeah, you're right.
But there's going to be a significant amount of people that don't have cell phones that are coming to town meetings, so they're going to have to be voting by paper.
Is it one or the other? Like, is it cell phone? Is it apps or clickers, or can it both be used to count?
I would let Greg answer that, but I think you can combine them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it won't matter which device is being used. They can both be used to get, at the same time by different people.
Has the decision been made whether or not we're going to use a tent outside or any of those logistic things? Have we decided?
Nothing yet.
No, I think once we decide on a date, then we have about, it's like a launch of a spacecraft. There'll be a lot of things that we'll have to work on between now and
where Darren is here, how long do we need to post this? Now, for an annual town meeting, it needs to be 7 days.
Yep.
We need a 7-day posting period. For a special town meeting, we need 2 weeks. So is this considered a special town meeting or the annual town meeting?
Annual.
My
This is the
understanding
annual,
is this is the annual because the board has previously voted to postpone the annual.
So we need at least a week prior to the meeting in order to post the meeting, and we need the warrant prior to posting the meeting.
Yep.
So the question is, can Mitch get the warrant done a week ahead of time?
So looking at timelines for that, to meet the 8th as the date would need to be posted by the end of next week. So we'd have it turned around and ready for the board to officially place the articles and then approve the warrant next Tuesday. For the 15th, it would be the 7th. I'm comfortable that if there's a truncated warrant, we could meet the requirement to get it done for the 8th.
And we'd have plenty of time, the 7 days, to post it and get it out there to the public.
Yeah,
Okay.
especially if it's truncated. Much of that is carried over year to year. Attorney Klein, correct me if I'm wrong. All of our standard articles, it's date changes and small adjustments. So those are not significant lifts to have to edit those.
So perhaps the first thing we should do is decide on a date.
Yes.
Just to make this question correct, and obviously every town is different, but the only thing I'd add as far as the amount of people, I mean, we have seen on average smaller showings at town meetings. Obviously that's why there's been, the ability to reduce quorums. And you're also talking about an August Saturday morning. I would think that would keep some people, not everyone's gonna to necessarily. It's not that cold April morning that we typically get. It always rains.
Right.
I would just. Oh,
Good.
go ahead, Paul.
No, I was just going to say, the fact that it's August, we are absolutely going to have to rent a tent, or I don't know if the town owns a tent, but you're going to have the August heat. We're going to have to be concerned about people dealing with that. So we're going to have to get a tent, and I think we need to probably do that sooner than later if we're going to go with the 15th of August.
Or
So,
the 8th.
Or the
Or
8th.
the 8th.
The 8th, yep.
And
And
I would
I'm hoping-
suggest.
I'm hoping that we can do this early in the day before the heat of the day. And of course, our goal is to get in and out as quickly as possible, because that's all part of the virus's length of time of exposure, if there's to be exposure.
Perhaps.
Right.
we
So
should
this
focus
is-
on starting
This
at-
is Sarah, not sure if you can hear me.
Yes,
Can you
go
hear
on
me?
there. Yep,
So
go ahead.
I just had an idea. I mean, maybe since it sounds like we're all kind of headed in the right direction, but it's the obviously the devil's in the details. And since people would have to kind of register, I wonder if it makes sense to just pick the date and the time and the location, which would be the school, right? And we put it out there, via code red, email, all the ways, and have people, say if they're coming. And then as soon as we know the numbers, figure out, we give a few, 5 days or something for people to kind of RSVP, leaving in a fudge factor, obviously. But then we figure out kind of what we're looking at for numbers. Because, if we get, 200, if 25 people say they'll be on the field and 200 people say they'll be in cars, then I think we're going to have to rethink the logistics a little bit. I don't know. I'm concerned. Like, personally, I'd rather not be in a tent, but, I just, I
Well,
don't know.
the tent would be open so that the air would
Yeah.
be circulate. But I'm talking August heat, and we got a lot of
Yeah.
elderly people.
Right. Well,
I can see people,
yeah, I think that's the beauty of having it sort of a dual. I'm not in favor of the app yet. I think maybe for a September/October town meeting, the fall one, I think working towards that would be great. I think sort of the early hybrid of on the field and also in cars with the ticket that they could hold out. I think that gives the biggest benefit for our residents in an elderly community where young people want to be out there, wouldn't mind, but older people would be in their cars with the air conditioning for August 8th. I mean, that's going to be no matter what, it could be rainy, it could be very hot. So I think that the cars are a perfect option.
yeah,
But I like
I'm
Sarah's
in agreement.
But I like Sarah's part too of seeing sort of what is we'll put out the date, we'll put out what we're thinking, but we want to sort of feel, is it going to be a huge amount of people of cars? Then we've got to sort of change. I mean, we'll have obviously loudspeakers and all of that, but I kind of like what Sarah said too.
So my
Yeah,
only
people getting
question would
engaged.
be, if say 95% of the people say they want to do it in cars, what are we going to do? If 400 people respond and 95% of them want to do it in cars.
Well, I think that, this is the first time we've done this. There is no precedent for any of this. We can find out what has happened in other communities, but you guys all know that Rockport is unique and Rockporters are unique. And so, Sarah's idea of getting a sense of what people would do is a very important one. They may change their minds at the last minute, but I think if we present this well enough and we get it out on cable and on Code Red and other signage and, on the newspaper, we would get a sense of what people are planning on doing. I'm not discouraging people, but I'm not encouraging people like I have in the past. It is what it is, and how I feel about this is how I feel about this. And I've push very hard for the legislature, I think, to do the right thing and to allow a virtual meeting, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So in the interim, I think we set this up, we practice it like any other emergency situation, and we do the best we can with it. But we're not going to know until it occurs. But I've spoken to enough people, maybe not, you know, the clerks from other communities, but enough people who have spoken to enough people that these are working pretty well, these hybrid meetings.
I've heard from other clerks, and certainly the outdoor meetings have been working very well.
Yeah.
Very uncomplicated outdoor meetings, just outdoors with social distancing. I think there was something in the newspaper with somebody in cars and placards going out the windows. I think that worked well too. So far, anything that people have tried, it appears that they haven't had a whole lot of problems with them.
So Pat, you'd be able to do a combo on the field and in the cars with placards?
Yeah, we'd have to probably at the beginning of the meeting get some volunteers to count votes in the cars if we didn't use some sort of an app. You'd have
and I think we would have to do those things well in advance of the meeting, because we would need a couple of deputy moderators.
Which is, it's not an easy thing to do unless I can get some high school kids, because certainly elderly people aren't going to be walking in a parking lot looking for placards hanging out the window.
No, my sense is that they would be in an elevated situation and they would look.
Oh, down on that
Down
might be easier than trying to.
Yeah, and we're going to have as few articles as we can, really.
Yeah.
The goal is to get in and out. And if you guys think that I'm tough on objection relevance on normal meetings, you should see what I'm going to do for this one. I mean, I want a short, pithy discussion. I don't want to, you know, talk about what's happening in you know, back in the 50s or something.
We should probably consider starting the meeting earlier than 9 o'clock as well. Because
8 a.m.
8 a.m.
Yeah.
8 a.m.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Out at the beach by 11.
Well, it's been happened before.
So let's just break it down and kind of make it into two things like it was on the agenda. The first thing is meeting date. So is that okay, Mitch, if we sort of break it out?
Yeah, I think in my mind, there's 4 breakouts, even further from the agenda. There's the date, there's how will it and where will it be held. There's the warrant content, truncated or full. And then a 4th one, in my mind, is what we do about September.
Okay.
But yes, if we did with
Meeting date.
the meeting dates, I'd offer the 8th. Let's say let's move it on. I know that on the school end, earlier is certainly better as they're trying to figure out what they're going to do in September. So if their budget is open and available earlier, that's certainly a better thing for them.
Okay.
I was going to get a haircut that morning, but I'll just postpone that.
Get it the night before, Bob.
Yeah.
So you look spiffy. So do I have a motion for August 8th?
I can make it. I move that the town of Rockport set their annual town meeting for August 8th, 2020, beginning at 8 a.m. on the campus of Rockport High School.
That's
And
8.
What's that?
It's 3/8.
3/8, yeah.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion regarding the 8th, August 8th at 8?
At 8 a.m.
At 8 a.m. Okay, a roll call
I like
vote.
it.
Selectman Wilkinson,
Aye.
Selectman Campbell,
Aye.
Selectman Brackett,
Aye.
Selectperson George, aye. So that's 5-0. So we know where it's going to be August 8th, 8 a.m.
I didn't vote.
What?
You forgot me.
Oh, Selectman Murphy.
That's okay. I vote aye.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, 5-0. So we have the place. We know it's going to be at 8 a.m. We know it's going to be August 8th. And now let's look at which one was the next one, Mitch? The
So
Warrant
where and
article?
how? I think you've checked a portion of that already with high
Okay.
school campus. The warrant will only say Rockport High School on it, as we normally do. So we're covered there. So it's down to what you want to strive for with technology use and general planning.
Okay, Ross?
As we're still on technology, I saw that Mike had his hand up a little while ago. I was just wondering if he could speak.
Sure. Mike?
Thank you, Ross. I just had a question about, we talked earlier, and it was mentioned that in order to get the audio to the people in the parking lots, that we would use some sort of, like the drive-in movie theaters do, some sort of FM transmitter. And I just wanted to make sure that we had a company that could do that, because that does require very specific equipment and a license in order to broadcast on those frequencies.
Yes, Darren?
Although I don't know the names off the top of my head, I have been told that we have several clients, and also the firm has names of some companies that have been doing exactly what Mike just said through an FM frequency, providing the means. So we're happy to get you that information.
And I've contacted one as well.
Yeah, I think
But
Bob.
they never got back to me.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
One question.
Sure, Pat.
Do I need to get Essex Bevilacqua there with speakers? Or does the school have something that they can use? No?
We don't have anything that would be that size. Everything in the auditorium is hardwired.
Okay.
And the athletic department has a small speaker, but it's really just for sideline announcing. It wouldn't really fit this. It only has one microphone that's tethered to it. So if you
Okay.
What about
microphone,
the people that we use for Christmas, for the pageant, or even I mean, it's a smaller system.
That's the one.
I'm sorry.
My guess is that we're looking at something more complicated than who we usually use. Would you think, Mike?
well, I think who we normally use for town meeting would function, because they usually do something very similar where they have remote speakers. I don't know that they'd be able to do the FM transmitter piece, but we'd need to get whatever two companies we decide on to talk to make sure that everything will work.
Now, I remember Art Bevilacqua, he was not feeling good, and he was getting an operation. Do you remember I sent an email about that and asked if he has the equipment there, can you set it up?
Well, originally it was, we were going to use the system in the auditorium, and I would just need microphones from him.
Okay.
If it's his entire system, I mean, I can run it because I've done that in the auditorium for years. Setting it up, if he could get someone there to set that up, and again, it would have to be in coordination with that company that's
The
going to
FM
provide
radio.
the FM transmission.
Okay, I will contact him tomorrow morning.
Okay, again,
Okay, anyone else? Any questions or?
I have one more, Madam Chair.
Yes, Ross.
Would we, like Select Person Wilkinson said, would we want to do RSVP so we could reserve parking in the main parking lot for residents that want to stay in their cars? And then we'd have to figure out where people
I don't
that
think
want
we
to
could
attend
demand
feel.
it, but we could say as a matter of courtesy, we would like you to tell us. If somebody, we can't
If we
deny
can't
entry if
ask, can we have them, can we reserve that spot for people that want to remain in the car?
Well, I think it would be good to know if we're going to have to, if there's enough parking on, like you're going into the auditorium on that side, or are we going to have it someplace else?
And
Hopefully there's no real distancing once you're in a car.
So why don't we'll have a meeting ASAP internally to try to figure out, work out Pat, Bob, IT, police,
Okay.
DPW. We'll pull together and see what we can figure out logistically for how that would work. Now that we have the date and the time, that's a big step forward. We can figure out how to make the logistics piece work.
And I think it'll be really important just when we talk about coming in your cars. You can sit with your air conditioning on. You can put your ticket up so your vote is counted, but you're not out in the sun. I think that's going to be a big thing for the older people in this town. And you look back at town meetings, and yes, there's a lot of young people, but there are also an awful lot of old seasoned Rockporters who love to go, always are very interested in things, the budget and things like that. So, and that way they can social distance in their own cars, but be there to vote and hear things. I think it's a great solution. And in looking forward to doing it maybe by an app if we need to at the next one, work on things and work the kinks out, sort of.
We could certainly try a test. Well, we're going to try this out beforehand anyway, so we'll test everything out, and yeah. If we actually use the app the next time we have a meeting, then we'll be ready for it.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. So Madam Chair, I would say next the warrant content.
Okay.
Does the board want a truncated warrant? Do you want the meeting as it normally would be? Something in between. I had sent the board as a refresher the latest list that's on there, and I had indicated to you basically all of our financial or finance related articles are the ones that I would suggest to you to move forward as part of a truncated warrant.
Yes.
Yes.
Bob can speak further to the petition articles, but there are a few other non-petition but non-finance related items, and I would recommend to you when we get to that point that those wait until a future meeting.
I think considering the situation that we're involved in here due to COVID-19, the quickest town meeting, the essential stuff that we need to deal with that is pertinent needs to be dealt with, and then we need to dismiss everyone at that point.
I agree. I think it's important to get the budget done.
Yep.
And work on when we will do our next one and incorporate these in the next one.
Yep.
As well as CPC. CPC needs some time to work on theirs. We don't want to rush theirs into now. They haven't had a chance to talk to everyone, and that would be too rushed, I feel. How does everyone else feel? Dawn, what's your feeling?
Yeah, no, I obviously brevity is the order of the day for this whole thing. So, let's get the essentials on. Let's move the meeting along as quickly as we can. That's going to give people, they're going to want to participate more. Maybe we'll get a higher participation rate knowing they're not going to be there all day, because that's obviously one of the concerns we've heard for years, that meetings drag on forever incessantly. So I think absolutely, let's get it down to the basics and move and go from there.
Okay. And Ross?
I agree with everything being said. I agree with a quick meeting.
Sarah?
Yeah, I agree with everyone as well. I think honestly as brief as possible.
Okay.
This is kind of a test because I think we are probably looking at a long time of, a long road of these types of meetings. So I think, we just deal with what we absolutely have to.
Great.
Indeed.
Any further discussion? So Mitch, do you have a motion for us? Or?
So for that, I don't need a vote at this point. I need the consensus, which I do have. Your vote on that will be when you approve the final warrant.
Yep.
Okay, we'll put that for the 28th.
Yes. Yep.
Oh, great.
And then, Madam Chair, the last item, fall town meeting is currently scheduled for September 21st. I had spoken with the CPC chair and said that certainly I'd bring this up to the board. Are you still would there still be an intent to hold it the 21st? Would there be a thought on trying to pack it into this meeting? It's primarily the CPC items. I think you've spoken to that piece already. Or is there a thought on not having one or pushing it back? Certainly no final decision on that needs to be made tonight, but it would be, I think, just generally helpful for all of us to have an idea on where people are with that, the board, the moderator, the clerk.
Well, I personally would like to see how our August 8th one goes. right after that meeting, decide. But I would say either the September or push it off to October. But again, it's going to be hard. It's cooler weather and school is in session, and we would need to see about Superintendent Lebo's, how he feels about people in there, or how are we going to social distance at that point? Dawn, did you have a question? Or
It's not a question, but a statement. I was actually, I wanted to suggest at the beginning of this, if we could kind of kill two birds with one stone and hold the meetings concurrently, or with the division. But it seemed like it was the will of the board to want to do this, as quickly as possible, which I agree with. And I think that's going to give people a sense of security when they get there and well-being. But I depending upon what was contained and how long we could reasonably project, Mitch had brought it up, and I'm not opposed to holding them both, but it doesn't seem like that would be the way people would want to go. I'd be interested to hear what my colleagues have to say.
Ross?
Is it hold them both at the same meeting, or you just mean concurrently?
Meaning on this, if I'm hearing this right, in the way at least I would suggest it is on the same day, but two separate meetings. Does that sound right, Mitch, or is that off?
So it could be either way, and Darren, please chime in if I'm incorrect. You could do it with two meetings together, like it's, like we actually used to do, where there was a special and a regular.
You need more notice.
Together. That would, again, of course, trigger the notice piece, but there's
so
nothing that says you can't put CPC on with that, that it must be in the fall. But as Ruth indicated, they're not done with their process. They'd have to go into pretty rapid overdrive to finish.
without
Okay.
looking at your bylaws, you can have, there's very few things that you couldn't, that you typically do by practice at your special, that you couldn't put on an annual warrant if you wanted to. The only exception would be, and I just don't have that part of your bylaws memorized, to be quite frank, if it said that the capital budget must be done at a special town meeting, or the CPA budget must be voted at a special town meeting. If there isn't that type of language in your bylaws, you could put it all on one warrant.
There's not. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
There isn't, yeah.
So how do my fellow board members feel? Is there an appetite to want to, rather than, and think about the positive on this as well, and Mr. Moderator, I'd be interested to hear what your opinion is, but rather than expose people potentially twice to a gathering, maybe there's merit in holding it once, even if it went on, for an hour or two longer. At least we could get all of the town's business done and not have to worry about it. And then hopefully come spring, we're back on a regular schedule.
Normally, I would be in favor of that, and I was walking in, going into today's meeting, but it just sounds like the main reason we have a fall town meeting is for the CPC, and then to adjust budgetary items, and neither of those sounds like will be ready. And we don't want to force the CPC. They need time to go through their process. If they were ready, I would say sure, but I don't think they will.
I think too that, being on CPC for so many years, we really made a conscious decision the second year of CPC in this town to completely separate CPC from the operating budget. There are still a lot of people who are concerned about monies in CPC that they don't understand have to stay in CPC only in certain categories that can be spent, and they want to move that money over into our operating budget. So that's why we've completely separated them. I can see you saying, Dawn, that have two separate meetings, but I don't think CPC is ready for that right now. It would really push their timeline too tight. They're just finishing up, figuring out what they want, and because they haven't been able to have any meetings all this time. So that they're already behind, I think, the 8 ball in looking at their applications. And I think it would be really rushed to push them into part of this meeting on the 8th.
Well,
Yeah.
remember, let me just, if I can throw this in to address that. Remember, the vote that we just took to meet on the 8th was predicated solely on having one meeting. So in light of the potential, and I use the word potential, for 2 meetings on one day, maybe that changes the date that we hold this meeting, and perhaps, what's our furthest out date? Is the 15th our end date on this, or do we have the ability to go longer?
We're getting, I think that the biggest, and I would say the most important piece in doing it earlier is that the school has the budget in place.
Okay.
They need it to be as early as possible.
Okay, I understand.
Yes,
It doesn't
Darren?
sound
This is Sarah.
logistically like it'll
This
work.
is this is
okay.
Sarah. Sorry to chime in, but I would love to do it at 1, because my first comment to Mitch was, let's just make this end of August or early September and combine. But like, for example, I have with another organization in town put a CPC application in, and they didn't even have an initial meeting. So I don't think there's any way. So I would propose that we go ahead with the August 8th for just bare bones budget, and then later in the, look to do CPC and anything else necessary later in the fall another way. Unfortunately with CPC, I don't think we have a choice this year, because they haven't done any of the process yet.
Right. Darren?
Madam Chair, the other thing I was just going to add is in Rockport and other places that always have a special town meeting, articles that sometimes appear are on issues that come up, later in the year. Obviously it's a little different because your town meeting's not in April, it's in August, but you could combine meetings and then something could happen towards the end of August or September that might necessitate a special town meeting anyway. So it just, I think it, given your time frame, it might be tough to combine them. And you may do that and still need a special town meeting for reasons that we just don't know at this moment.
Okay. Any other comment on Dawn's comment about 2, adding it that time, or discussion?
I think Carrie had her hand up, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay, Carrie?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, there's been some suggestions of holding the special at a later time in the fall. Just keep in mind that I can't go through the recap process until I have that as a done deal. So the later that meeting is, the later the recap and the later our tax bills go out. So.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind for sure.
Mhm.
Any other thing we need to discuss on this, Mitch?
I think you've hit the big points to get us rolling now. Bob, is there anything else, or Pat, that's standing out that we need at the moment?
Well,
I
other
can't
than
think of anything.
when is fall town meeting? I mean,
Well, we might know on
have
August.
that at all. September 21. I mean, I have an election on September 1st and one on November 6th that are. The November 6th one is going to be a big one. So I would, just propose that we get that perhaps earlier rather than later.
Have you got any fails from how residents feel about having a meeting? Have you talked to anyone? Have they been worried?
Well, we've really been trying to minimize our interaction with people, and so I have actually spoken with very few people. It's not like me. It's very painful, but I haven't heard much other than I think people in general are applauding. They're applauding everything that the town is doing to be conservative and careful about their health. And the few people that I've spoken to are likewise, I think, appreciative that we're not taking this lightly and that we are evidencing our concern about people's health and well-being. And other than that, my sense is that if we present this properly, that we'll have a good reservoir of goodwill, and people aren't going to be annoyed by the last minute nature of it or by the fact that we're doing it differently, but they will applaud the fact that we're thinking deeply and carefully about keeping them all safe.
True. Okay, anything we need to other covered, Mitch?
I think if the moderator and the clerk are comfortable, I'm comfortable with the moment. We'll be back in front of you on Tuesday with a warrant for you to consider and to potentially vote to authorize. If you do that, it can be signed right after, and then we can get it posted by the 31st.
Great.
I'm comfortable and appreciative.
Okay. Everyone comfortable with what we've decided?
Yes.
Yep.
Dawn?
I am.
Sarah?
Yep, I'm comfortable. Thank you.
Pat, you feel good with it?
Yep, other than getting that date in the fall.
Yep. Darren, anything you want to add or need to add?
Oh, hang on, Darren's.
Muted.
Oh, go ahead, Darren.
I'm all set.
Okay.
Thank you. Glad to see everybody.
Good to see you.
Great to see you, Darren.
So our next meeting is July 28th. That's going to be with the Board of Health. That will be probably a pretty long one, I think. It will be hopefully our last regular meeting with the Board of Health. Maybe we'll be meeting once a month with them, but we'll try to get back on our schedule of just the Board of Selectmen meeting like this, so we can get some things done and move on. Any other business, Mitch, that we need to discuss?
Is that
No,
Madam Chair, is that a 6 p.m. meeting on
Yes.
Tuesday? It is, okay, thank you.
No, Madam Chair, nothing else at this point. We'll have this prepared and ready for you. We'll be utilizing our standard process for next week with the joint meeting. We'll get this added on, and internally we will get the gears moving on carrying out the process so that the meeting will be successful. It was good to have the election earlier. We were able to test all of our processes, and I think those worked well. We'll be able to probably, in most cases, just apply those. And in this circumstance, it'll be probably a little bit easier with some of that because it's outside. But we will be sure that we have all of the resources we need to present that day to make it go off in a way that is safe and as comfortable as possible that day.
Right. And I think it would be a great reassurance to the residents that we have scheduled a date and we've got a couple of different options for them and to be safe. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Just a quick
Yes.
question, if I may, before we end up. I'm sorry. Mitch and Ruth, what is the day that the agenda is being discussed? Because I'd like to, obviously, as vice chair, would like to participate in that. So I just wanted to get a feel for that so I can block out my time and help out with that.
You don't have a specific time. Mitch calls me and I talk.
I don't have a time
We don't have a
right now. I don't
specific.
have any kind of time.
Okay, can we set
Right.
one just so because I'd like to be involved in that discussion.
That's up to it's up to Ruth.
Yeah, I'll have to look at that. I'll have to look at my schedule. We'll try to I'll get back to you, Don.
Perfect. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded?
Second?
Roll call vote. Selectman Brackett,
Aye.
Selectman Campbell,
Aye.
Selectman Murphy,
Aye.
Select Person Wilkinson,
Aye.
Select Person George, aye, 5-0. The meeting is adjourned.